The 1990s were different. Before social media, before undefeated records became business investments, before fighters spent years negotiating one matchup, this was the era of HBO boxing. An era where nights felt cinematic. Jim Lampley's voice.
And Tyson, to his credit, has stood in there and taken the punches.
Oh, what a right hand by Tyson to begin the 10th round. Emphasis on man, Larry. This has been an inspired, courageous performance by a man whose mother has died within the past month, whose son's mother is battling a difficult kidney ailment, who had every reason to come into this bout depressed and downtrodden, chosen by no one to have a chance of getting out of the first few rounds, and he has thoroughly dominated Mike Tyson with the exception of the moment when he went down.
It appears that Tyson is virtually a one-eyed fighter at this point.
A desperate one-eyed fighter. Rolling willingly just to try to get in the shot that will finish things in.
Oh, the uppercut.
What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson.
The dark arena, the giant crowds at the MGM Grand. Elite fighters fighting each other repeatedly instead of protecting rankings and paydays. And on May 7th, 1994, Don King managed to put together the greatest boxing card of all time. This is ironic considering King's reputation for years. For years, fighters accused Don King of underpaying them, manipulating contracts, and controlling careers behind the scenes. But despite all that controversy surrounding him, there's one thing nobody can deny. He knew how to make events and make them feel massive. And this card was the revenge of the rematches. 5 title fights, 4 championship rematches, multiple Hall of Famers, undefeated champions, violent rivalries, legends trying to reclaim greatness. The card opened with perfection. Ricardo Lopez is not known to most fans at 104 pounds, so fighting in the lower classes, greatness usually goes unnoticed. He entered the fight with a perfect 35-0 record. Across from him was Kerman Gardia, a tough Colombian challenger stepping into the biggest moment of his career, but almost immediately Lopez established complete control. You may not know Ricardo Lopez, but he was that dude.
This man's boxing record looks like a typo. 51 wins, 0 losses, and 1 draw. Meet Ricardo El Finito Lopez, the Mexican legend who retired undefeated and still somehow underrated. Just 5 feet 5 inches, he hit like a wrecking ball in miniature, racking up 38 knockouts with surgical precision. His technique, so clean it inspired the Hajime no Ippo manga series. That's right, dude was moving like a comic book hero before the ink even dried on the page. Fans called him the Mexican Master. Opponents just called him Nightmare Fuel. Was so flawless in the ring that one commentator joked, Lopez doesn't fight boxers, teaches them. Imagine never tasting defeat in your life. Ricardo Lopez didn't just box, he rewrote the script of perfection.
The first rematch of the card was Azuma Nelson versus Jesse James Leija. Unlike Lopez's perfection, this fight was about survival. Azuma Nelson was already viewed as one of boxing's greatest, but by 1994, age had started becoming a part of the conversation. Across the ring stood Jesse James Leija, younger, faster, and determined to prove the first fight, which ended in a controversial draw, wasn't a fluke. This rematch was about generations colliding, the old legend trying to hold on to greatness, the young contender trying to replace him. This time, Leija came in with a smarter game plan, using speed, movement, and sharp combinations to control the fight early. Nelson was still dangerous, still experienced, still capable of changing a fight with one punch, but for one of the first times in his legendary career, he looked old. Not washed, not weak, just a step behind. Leija stayed disciplined for all 12 rounds, earned a unanimous decision victory, capturing the biggest win of his career while signaling the slow end of an era for one of boxing's greatest champions. Then came Terry Norris versus Simon Brown. If the earlier fights were about skill and legacy, this one was about redemption. Going into their first fight in 1993, Terry Norris was considered one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Fast hands, explosive offense, incredible athleticism. There was already talk about future super fights against guys like Pernell Whitaker. Simon Brown was supposed to be another victory on the path toward greatness. Instead, Brown shocked the boxing world. In their first fight, Brown dropped Norris with a jab in the opening round before eventually stopping him in the fourth. Overnight, Norris' aura of instability disappeared, and Norris took that loss personally. Before the rematch, Norris openly admitted he became obsessed with being viewed as unbeatable. He admitted he fought emotionally in the first fight, trying too hard to knock Brown out instead of boxing intelligently. Simon Brown hated hearing that. As far as Brown was concerned, there was no excuses. He knocked Terry Norris out. So when the rematch arrived, the tension was real. Had Simon Brown exposed Terry Norris permanently, or could Norris reinvent himself? This time, Norris fought smarter. Instead of standing directly in front of Brown and trading, he boxed beautifully, using movement, angles, discipline to frustrate Brown all night long. Brown still remained dangerous. In the third round, Brown landed another hard right hand that briefly rocked Norris, bringing back memories of the first fight. Every time Brown tried to drag him into chaos, Norris refused. By the end of 12 rounds, Terry Norris had reclaimed his title by unanimous decision, proving he could adjust, survive pressure, and outbox one of the most dangerous fighters in the division. And the violence still had not peaked this night. May 7th, 1994, revenge of the rematches. Because next was Gerald McClellan versus Julian Jackson 2, a fight many fans viewed less as a boxing match and more like two loaded weapons pointed at each other. Julian Jackson was one of the most feared punchers in boxing history. One right hand from Jackson could erase an entire fight instantly. But Gerald McClellan might have even been scarier. 1 year earlier, McClellan had shocked the boxing world by stopping the heavily favored Jackson in the 5th round. Since then, McClellan defended his title twice, both by first-round knockout. He wasn't just beating people, he was destroying them. Before the rematch, McClellan boldly declared himself the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world and promised this would be the greatest performance of his career. In this fight, once the bell rang, the fight barely lasted long enough to process what happened. Seconds into the opening round, McClellan landed a sharp jab, followed by a crushing right hand that immediately staggered Jackson. The crowd exploded. McClellan swarmed him with brutal barrage of punches. Jackson tried to survive, he tried to fire back, but it was overwhelming.
Their weight well, certainly in this decade.
Yeah, McClellan's power is frightening, Reg. And he's probably at the better stage of his career than Jackson. Oh, good right hand already.
There he is. Talk about the hitman from Detroit. This one is Gerald McClellan knocked out John McGarvey in London. Is he going to do it again against Julian Jackson? The man who knocked out Harold Graham. He looks as though he's not going to let go of this, and Joe Cortez, the referee, he's watching there very close. He keeps getting near it, and McClellan won't let this fella off the hook.
He's not getting through cleanly. Jackson knows what he's trying to do. He was pushed over there. That wasn't a knockdown, Regs. That was a push. Jackson.
After collapsing into the ropes and taking a standing count, Jackson was dropped again moments later, and this time he couldn't beat the count. This fight lasted 83 seconds.
Gerald McClellan from the Detroit now. Julian Jackson from the Virgin Isles. What a puncher he's proved in the past. Oh no, he's not going to get over this opening round, Jim. This really is a turn-up.
Well, that was certainly a knockdown, Regs, but still no real good clean shot landed on his chin, but he's not going to beat the count.
No, he's counted him out on his feet in the opening round. What a victory that one of the.
And afterward, McClellan delivered one of the coldest quotes imaginable. He said, "What separates me from the rest is that I'm mean. When Gerald McClellan gets a fighter hurt and in trouble, he's dead. At that moment, Gerald McClellan looked unstoppable. Couldn't fathom what would happen to him a few years later with his wars against Nigel Benn. But going back to the card, now we're up to the main event. Frankie Randall versus Julio César Chávez 2. This is the fight that defined the entire card. Just 3 months earlier, Frankie Randall shocked the world by handing Chávez the first loss of his professional career, ending a 90-fight unbeaten streak that many thought would never end. At the time, Chávez was untouchable, immortal, an icon in Mexico, one of boxing's biggest stars, a pressure fighter so relentless that opponents often entered the ring already defeated mentally. Frankie Randall changed that. Their first fight became instantly controversial after referee Richard Steele deducted 2 points from Chávez for repeated low blows. Deductions many believe cost Chávez the decision. Chávez refused to accept the loss quietly. Immediately after the fight, he activated his rematch clause and promised revenge. Once the rematch began, the tension inside MGM felt enormous. Unlike the first fight, there was no clear separation between the fighters. Randall boxed sharply while Chávez slowly increased pressure round after round. By the 8th round, the fight was close. Then came the controversy. During an exchange, Randall accidentally clashed heads with Chávez, opening a deep cut near Chávez's eye. With only seconds remaining in the round, the ringside doctor stopped the fight, and because of WBC rules, Randall was automatically deducted a point for the accidental headbutt before the fight went to the scorecard. The single point changed everything. Without it, the fight would have ended in a draw and Randall would have retained his title. Instead, Chávez regained the championship by controversial technical decision. And once again, boxing fans exploded with outrage. Even Chávez admitted afterward, "I don't like winning this way." And somehow, after an entire night built around revenge and unfinished business, the biggest fight of the night ended in even more controversy, which honestly felt perfect for this card because Revenge of the Rematches wasn't remembered for clean ending. It was remembered because every fight felt dangerous. Every fight mattered. Every fight told a story. That's why it is the greatest boxing card ever assembled. Not because every fight was perfect, not because every ending was satisfying, but because this card represented everything boxing used to be. Risk, violence, redemption, legends, controversy, great fighters actually fighting each other. And the truth is, we will never see another night like this again because modern boxing simply doesn't work this way anymore. Today, one elite matchup can take years to negotiate. Fighters protect undefeated records like investments. Promoters and networks refuse to cooperate. Undercards are trash. Activity levels are at the lowest they've ever been, and they're not going to ramp up anytime soon. But on this night, May 7th, 1994, Don King stacked 5 title fights, 4 championship rematches, Hall of Famers, and some of the most dangerous fighters in the world onto a single card. And for a few hours inside the MGM, boxing felt larger than life. Maybe this is why people complained about Don King. Because how could he get all these people on one fight, on one card? Maybe he was robbing them. But as a fan, I go back and watch these cards, and it's amazing from top to bottom how great this card was, the greatest of all time. And there's no debate about it.